what I've been asked to focus on is from Sage's perspective to give a bit of an overview on publishing your textbook, but I'm trying to do that in a way that's not just about the Sage process, and hopefully what I'm sharing with you is going to be relevant to many other publishers that are seeking to publish textbooks. Why would you publish a textbook? There are so many textbooks in the world, and in an environment where you're increasingly being asked to do much more about showing your research output, why would you consider a textbook? And that's a really good question. These are the reasons why we find that textbook authors and us really get on well together. One is if you are teaching and you're absolutely passionate about your teaching, which I'm sure you all are, but you are also thinking that you're in a good place to be able to inspire your students, that you really want to engage your students, the textbook can be an amazing format for doing so. And a lot of people really enjoy being able to do that. If you spent time designing your course, and you've got a lot of materials that you've created, you might be in a really good position to, if you like, package that up into something that can really be transformative and can really be influential to a lot of courses all around the world. While research is often the key metric and research output, the key metric that a lot of institutions use in terms of career development, there is actually I think it's true to say that there is a possibility of gaining reputation as well through the textbook, being able to make a name for yourself as somebody who's really been able to explain key concepts or transform a subject into something that's really helpful for learning. And there is an opportunity through that to disseminate your own, not just experience and knowledge of teaching, but also your interpretation of subject areas and your ability to, if you like, sort of really challenge sometimes the curriculum. And I think right now with the whole decolonize the curriculum, there's a really exciting moment which publishers like Sage are really engaged in thinking, what exactly have we been publishing? And a lot of academics themselves recognizing and students challenging them about why are we studying this and not that? And I think actually there is an exciting moment for textbooks to really turn and pivot on that and think, let's have some new voices and some voices on arenas that we haven't been, if you like, putting in front of audiences that much before. So we at Sage are having a lot of conversations around that. And of course, identifying a gap in the market. If you feel that you're trying to teach something and you can't find anything else, any other textbook that you can use, then that's a great. So as you can see, there are reasons for doing it, but they will often step away from some of the ways in which your university might be talking to you. And we have unfortunately had examples where we have some extremely excited authors, really qualified, ready to go, we're at contract stage. And then they've had a conversation with their supervisor or their manager and been told, do not sign. And that's heartbreaking, but it's just something to be aware of, that there is a negotiation that often people are having to do within their institution. In terms of how would you approach a publisher? So I'm just going to go through a little bit of these details here, starting out with sort of going through the concept of having the idea, the outline and the proposal, and sort of the steps, the sort of how. So on the first hand, there is the writing a proposal. So you will find proposal guidelines, and at the end of my deck, there's a link to sample proposal guidelines from Sage. But every publisher, as Kim said, you just Google proposal guidelines and you'll find it. So key elements of a successful proposal, we would say, are these ones. Making sure that you're really clear about who you're writing for, what your target market is. So name the course, think about the courses and how this course might also be applicable, and think outside of your university, outside of your course, outside of your region. If you're talking to a global publisher, which is where Sage is, that we don't want to publish for one country or one region. So we really want our authors to be thinking about how it can move across territories. In the proposal, you'll be asked to really explain what your approach is. You might have a particular way in which you're setting out the value of teaching this course and your rationale. what's really, really valuable, and I think this is probably the thing that takes the most work, is a detailed table of contents. Now, for us to be able to have a really good assessment of where you are and how it matches with what we know courses are doing or what they're wanting, to see your more detailed run through, not just of a chapter title, but like what kind of subcategories within that chapter would you expect to have, but also what kind of case studies would you use, what kind of examples would you bring, because we want to hear that you're bringing examples either from different kinds of organizations or from different countries, and again trying to think about diversifying the actual content within your work, so that we have examples of students from different backgrounds and experiences, is a really good way of making sure that you're thinking about engaging students, regardless of where, that you're not pigeonholing students into one particular type of student. USPs, of course, why your book is going to be different. And it could just be that you say, I write better. I've got a nice tone of voice. I can be quite funny and quirky, or I'm actually going to be bringing in a different perspective, which I think has a lot of value. So think about, why would somebody pick up your book? And often that is what a lecturer is doing. They're sort of looking at 2 books or 3 books or more, and they're sort of literally trying to decide which one am I going to work with better. So feel free to do that, and know your competitors. That's really, really valuable. I think it's been mentioned by Fran and Kim before, in terms of, if you're looking at what you want to publish, look at who else is out there. Where do you compare, and what kind of work are you slotting into? The same with textbooks. Know what you're going up against, so that you can really show that you understand the market that you're entering in, because you are going to be competing most likely. So once you've stuffed that out, you've got a fantastic proposal, and you've written that, what will happen is you'll share that with the commissioning editor that you've identified. And I would say it's really important to be in a relationship, and it can be a brand new, you're starting a relationship by getting in touch, but see that as a relationship where you're asking for their feedback and you're engaging in a dialogue, because they will know their market, and they will know their list, and they will know how your idea could fit, and they will be able to help you craft your idea to fit either in the market or in the list, and give a good positioning. So see that relationship as valuable, and engage with the feedback that they're giving you. What then would happen is, once you and the editor are agreed on the proposal, that will go out to external reviews, and it might be 3 reviews, it might be 5 reviews. It really depends on, sometimes it might just depend on the confidence level of the editor themselves, in terms of how many pieces of feedback and where they want the feedback from, because they might be looking at different countries as well. So that feedback, once that comes in, it can be quite rich, quite closely read feedback in terms of your proposal. Sometimes you might have submitted or been asked to submit a sample chapter, so that we can get an even better feel of how you're going to be writing. And so we'll get rich feedback on that, which the editor will go through and kind of summarize and come back to you and say, based on this, this is where I'm at in terms of how this book fits. They're not likely to just send it to you and go, I don't know, what do you think, right? So they're going to have a view, and I guess that's pretty similar perhaps to the journal process, where you're having somebody engaging as well and interpreting the feedback. And possibly you might want to develop that proposal. It's possible, sometimes it's not that common, but it's possible that you could re-review a proposal. It's not common, because usually if you've responded to the feedback, the editor will be confident enough to go, you and I are having a conversation here, you've responded, I trust you, you've got a lot of writing to do, I don't need you to do it now. We can go through and agree that you can begin the work. So there's more time built into developing your idea much further once you guys have agreed that this is something to run with. And then that would go internally to an editorial board for sign-off. So you've agreed on your idea, and now you're free. And I can't remember who asked the question about how much time, and that's a really good question, and it's really hard to answer it. Often it's 18 months, sometimes it's 24 months. That I would say that would tend to be where we sit, but that doesn't mean that it always comes in on time. So you'll be sent author guidelines, and then you will have the chance to work closely with the editor, or go off and just do your thing. And that will depend on who you are, who they are, and how you guys are working. But often we are putting into the contract sort of milestones, where we would say we would like to see 3 chapters in 6 months, and then we would like to see the next maybe 2 months after that. But you'd agree that with the editor, and they would be there for you to send a chapter to them and go, this is where I am at. How is it feeling? Can you give me some guidelines? You might even want to ask them to send it out for another review or a read, and get some feedback that helps you figure out. And often that's really useful in a textbook. In one chapter, take one chapter as your sample and get that right. Get that right in terms of tone, in terms of structure, in terms of style, in terms of learning objects that you're putting in terms of thinking about the pedagogy of what you're doing. And once you've got that right, then you've got probably a good template, if you like, for you to keep on doing the rest of your chapters. There is a role within the textbook publishing, which is called a development editor, and that might be where the editor then assigns your project over to somebody who's called a development editor, and they're literally working on developing that text with you. They're looking at testing out some of your case studies. They're looking at testing out some of your learning objects. They're helping you with feedback about what students want, and they're also thinking about any other online resources that might be come alongside your book. And I mentioned draft chapters already. So then, what makes a successful book? And as you've seen, I've peppered my presentation. Just while others were doing their presentations, I noticed that mine were quite stark. So I've peppered them with book examples, book covers, and this is Anwil's book cover on the right slide. I think what makes a successful textbook. These are the things that I think are worth talking about. Thinking about the student, really think about your student, and that's something that the editor will often as well come back to you and go, I've just read your these 2 paragraphs. I don't understand it. If I don't understand it, I don't think a student will understand it. Can you look at that again? Definitely, we've started at the beginning of thinking about courses, so mapping to courses, thinking about how you can make students understand the link between what's theoretical and what's in practice. But this is what you would have been doing anyway in terms of being somebody who's teaching. You'll know that that's what you're all about in the classroom. So put that into the book. Talked about a rich array of case studies, and I've mentioned diversity throughout. So just thinking about diversity in terms of student names. Sometimes we're finding, books might just use one sort of Europeanized or Westernized name in terms of an example of a case study, but also different regional examples, and think about ethnic diversity, gender. Just sort of engage in that more. And I think that as publishers, we haven't been pushing on that as much as we should have been in the past. And now we're doing that more. Online resources is a good conversation to have with your editor. Do we need online resources? What are they likely to look like? Am I going to be the one doing them? Mostly that is the case. And if so, what does that mean? Is there anything that you can use? Do we have other resources that we can help with? So at Sage, we often enable freeing up of journal articles or maybe video case studies that we've been doing through our video digital products that we sell into the library. So we can offer more resources around your textbook that aren't just created by yourself. And one important thing here, and in Anwil's example here, we've got a 5th edition, is think ahead that what is possible if you're successful is that we would want to do a new edition with you. And so that's a commitment as well. If you're really up for being successful as a textbook writer, you're going to be with us for a while, and we're going to want to work with you and re-edition the book. And sometimes I have a very good colleague who says it's not a textbook until you've gone to the 3rd edition. That doesn't have to be true, but it's an interesting thing to just bear in mind. The first one is trying it out in the market. There's a lot to learn. The second one is building on what you've learned and embedding further. And by the 3rd edition, maybe you've got quite a base of users who want your book. They want the next edition, and they're looking forward to it. So think about the long term. In terms of where you should publish your book, I would really echo the speakers that have spoken before around do your research, think about your publishers, look at who has what and where your book fits. Do they have textbooks in this subject area? Are they at the level that you're interested in, or are they at quite high level and so they won't know how to do an introductory undergraduate textbook? Are they able to promote your book? And if so, in what ways? Do they have sales reps that are on the ground, that are knocking on doors when doors were there to be knocked on, and they will be there again to knock on? Are they talking to lecturers about what they're using and how they're using it? Are they able to offer people into the lecturer. I'm sure you've had experience of being at work and somebody coming into your room and asking you, what are you using? Why do you like it? And what about, have you thought about, and they have something to share with you and see if you're interested in that. So that's a big part of the sales process for the textbook. This is why we would say choose us, right? So think about what the publisher is saying about why they should be the one chosen, and do feel that you are the author, you are the star, you're the one that matters, and you should feel that you're making a choice. So you should be able to shop around, and it's been mentioned already, but in terms of feeling free to say, I have this idea, I am going to send it to other publishers, I'm choosing you. If you don't want me to send it to other publishers, tell me right now, and if so, move fast with me. Yeah, don't keep me hanging, because I matter. So feel free to use your voice and really say what it is that you want, and see what kind of engagement you get. I'm all up for that. So just some recent examples of textbooks, and then this slide deck will have the editors in the business management at Sage that you could get in touch with, and also a bit of resources for that says a bit more about some examples of resources that we have.